the dopamine isn't there anymore. That's what makes the relationship last for a long time.
For all who just love vanilla, this episode is for you.
There are 3 different types of sex. It's taboo and people can't talk about it, even if they're in relationships for many, many years and don't ever talk about sex.
I knew someone that wouldn't even say vagina. They said. Hi, Erin.
Hi, Tanya. How are you?
I'm doing well. Doing another episode before I take off to Vegas. And so today we're going to be talking about trading in the vanilla. For all the vanilla aficionados who just love vanilla, they don't like chocolate for whatever reason.
Yes.
This episode is for you.
Yes, if you're wanting to dive into the rocky road, or I don't know, butter pecan at least.
Rainbow sherbet.
Yes.
I like this topic because it is a trap that people easily fall into from multiple areas of life, right? There's some people who really want, they're like, if it's not broken, why fix it? Right? And from our lens of, sexual intimacy, relationships, I think we want to talk about why that can become an issue. And I, of course, have some anecdotal, personal experience about this from both within intimacy and, just in general, what am I going to eat type of things.
Okay.
So just from, right, we might find a meal. It's the best for me because I'm a chocolate girl. I love this one particular dessert at Carrabba's. It's called the chocolate dream. It's like layers of mousse and these very thin chocolate layers that are hard, kind of crunchy, and with whipped cream in there. And it's just it's a chocolate dream. And every time I go there, I'm gonna get it, and I'm gonna have my portion, and whoever I'm with is gonna have the rest or half of it, whatever. But I always get it, no matter what. And granted, I don't go to Carrabba's daily or weekly, not even monthly. I may go a few times a year. So I'm okay with it. I have yet to get tired of that. And it's been decades that I've been eating this particular ice cream, dessert. Now, I have also been in a relationship where you find a particular practice in the bedroom and it works so well, you go to that every single time. It's like how you're going to finish off and ride off into the sunset of blissful orgasm trail, right? Like this works. And so you do this every time, right? And for me, it worked for a very, very long time, over a decade, which some people might say, what the heck? However, I will say there was a moment towards the tail end where it began to feel boring, or do I have to do this again? And that's the trap we're talking about, which this if it's predictable, right? Women in their mind, that they're more stimulated in their mind, and you're telling it's the same story. You already know what's going to happen next. And so it becomes not as exciting. It's like, well, it's going to happen, and then sometimes it's like, oh my gosh, it didn't happen. And that's what started happening towards the tail end, was achieving the peak of orgasm was no longer happening. And then you begin to question, like, uh-oh, is there something wrong? Are they not, both sides of the partnership can have questions as to whether they're still attracted to them. And I think it's more than that. There's, right, it's more than that going on. So
I agree. So what you're describing is the psychological safety that exists with predictability. But after a while, the predictability isn't enough. And so I guess you know this, as a mental health professional, like the dopamine isn't there anymore. And you need the dopamine, for the newness. That's what makes the relationship, last for a long time, because you have those periodic dopamine rushes, or rocky road, or
sprinkles.
Yeah, or change your dessert or something like that. And when you do that, like in the bedroom, it doesn't have to risk the relationship. It just means, you can explain it exactly like that. You don't have to say the person is boring and vanilla. When you're in the vanilla trap, you could just say, well, why don't we put some amaretto on top this time?
Yeah. And it's interesting, right? Because some of these same people in these relationships will begin to explore alternate, whether they're satisfying themselves because they're not achieving the same satisfaction. So, their partner may find them, masturbating more, or again, because they're not being fulfilled. And so, how do couples broach that topic? What do they, because I think a lot of people are afraid to sometimes to even bring it up. They just kind of are, resentful about it happening. And then they come to us in the therapy world. They're like, want to complain about it all, and have not yet had a respectful conversation or ask, what's going on. And remember, we're aging every year, right? So what we did in our 20s and 30s is maybe different from our 40s, 50s, 60s. Right. You might not be able to do all those gymnastic type positions, if that was what was your flavor, so there is an evolution that's happening within the bedroom. And does it mean that, it's killed or it's done and over? You ever hear those people talk about, oh, well, when I reached menopause, I was just done. I didn't want sex, women in particular, right? I didn't want sex at all. But we've also heard the opposite from as well. Sometimes drive increases. So, it really is what is the specific situation of the couple coming in.
Well, I've got one here.
Okay.
This was actually a reader. Okay. couple in their 30s. They love each other deeply, but their sex life is consistently good and not great. They are feeling guilty for wanting more, and they feel if they suggest something new, the partner will think they're dissatisfied with them. And so I guess, what would we say about the societal expectations about good enough? Okay. What are your goals, in the bedroom? And you mentioned earlier about there is an evolution, like when you're in a relationship, like how are you evolving in the bedroom too? So I believe, like what you were saying, the predictability, it's comfortable, it's psychologically comfortable, it makes you feel very safe. But if you're not using your imagination, how is there any growth in the relationship? And it doesn't mean diving into rocky road. It just means, where is the evolution occurring?
It's not.
Right. I think people should be, what do I call it? Instructional. Like there should be instructional sex. That's what I call it.
Yeah.
There should be awkward times and funny times, all of your life, all of your sex life.
I agree.
And that connects you when you're able to be awkward with somebody. I mean, it's the person that you trust.
Yeah.
And so I always tell people there are 3 different types of sex. You have the connectedness kind of sex, where you're just trying to be close to your partner. There may or may not be orgasms there. You may be giving a gift to a partner if you're not really in the mood. And so it's just, hey, I'm just trying to stay connected to this person. Mm-hmm. And then you have like the instructional sex. It's, well, I read about this new position. I picked up this new toy or this new lube and I want to try it with you. Or you're learning something about your body and you want to share that with your partner. Mm-hmm. All that's instructional. And again, there may or may not be an orgasmic conclusion. It's still fun and can be awkward. You're learning something together. And then there's the sex that everybody thinks about, the bang one out, stress management, penetration.
Yeah.
And everybody has a orgasm at the end. And that's not true. If you put all of those others in there, I hope people will think about that. It can still be predictable, but you're just adding a little bit.
Yeah.
You're expanding your comfort zone.
Yeah, it's surprising to me, doing such intimate things with people. I mean, come on, we're talking about, right, places that make noise, right? Like there's these private areas. I mean, you're going to have sometime in your life a gaseous experience or something is going to happen, and people will be embarrassed to, it's like, oh, it didn't happen. They don't want it. they just don't even want to think. It's like, but that's what makes sex enjoyable, when you can pull down those
Guard.
your yeah, and your the reality of what it's supposed to be enjoyed and communicated about. Like if you're doing something just for someone else, that's what they like,
mm-hmm.
but you're not really into it, you're I mean, how do you expect to enjoy it? I mean, really? I mean, maybe if you are enjoying giving to them, yes, that you're going to get some enjoyment out of that. But is that all that you want? Do you want more than that? Do you want, whatever fantasy that you have going on in your mind? And, this couple, in their 30s, I mean, right at the core of it, right? It's not wanting to even ask,
mm-hmm.
for something because I would like to know why they don't think they can talk about it. That seems like a very foundational part of a sexual relationship.
I agree.
So, if you're that wound up, how do you expect to be able to unwind enough to have, I mean, can you imagine like all the thoughts going on in their head while they're participating in sex? You're not going to enjoy it when you're up here worried about this or that and the other.
I agree.
Um, so,
And so one of the assignments that I gave them was, it's called the honesty inventory. And you can actually use the yes, no, maybe list, and where, first of all, they're learning sexual language so that they can talk. And then they're articulating hidden fantasies. And so I assigned them to do that. First of all, take a look at the list, see what things are there definite yeses, they're hardcore no's, and then whatever else is in the middle, those are your maybes. Maybe those will be conditional based upon something. And it actually opens up really good communication with couples, because then they're able to say, oh, okay, here are the tools that I need to actually talk about sex, because for some reason it's taboo and people can't talk about it, even if they're in relationships for many, many years. They'll have children and everything and don't ever talk about sex. So that's my assignment to people, is to get a baseline of being able to talk about it and admit that you have fantasies.
yeah. Do you remember that movie Death Becomes Her with Goldie Hawn and Meryl Streep? And she has that full change into being this very sexy woman, Goldie Hawn's character. And she goes up to Bruce Willis and she's whispering in her ears. She's like, things I could never say before. And it's like, sexy. And she's using all these. And then she's like, sex. And he's like, because she would never say that before. This is what it kind of reminds me of. It's like, people do not, they really are uncomfortable having, they don't even say, I knew someone that wouldn't even say vagina. They said front butt. It's like, front butt? What the heck?
Front butt. Okay.
Granted, it was in talking to children, but it was like, you're going to confuse a child.
Yes. That's
so
a whole other, like, not using the right words. Like, we're at that point where we can't even use the right anatomical terms for our body parts because of the shame that's associated with it.
Yeah.
So that's a whole other topic. So what assignment would you give a couple that wanted to maybe move from vanilla or butter pecan and move over to some kind of rocky road in the bedroom?
I would say, do something unexpected. Throw in a spontaneous sexual encounter or intimate encounter. It doesn't have to be right away sex. Maybe it's foreplay, just to excite them again. I would say to whomever is feeling less enthusiastic is to do something out of their routine. The homework would be, have just something small to begin with. Grab your partner's bum while they're cooking dinner. Swoop around and give them. This will be my own, fantasy. But I'm sure they have a fantasy that is, whether it's sex or not, just something that makes them feel that rush of excitement again. So try to do that just once this coming week before next session and see how that goes. Something that's out of their routine where it's not expected. And
Like
see,
meeting in a hotel bar as strangers.
sure. Role play if they want.
Yeah.
Be the opposite of what they usually are. Get a little dirty, as they say, if they're comfortable with that. I would encourage them to be a little uncomfortable.
Yeah, that's the whole point. Like, being a little awkward. You and your partner are the only two that know what's going on. You could, if your partner wears a uniform to work, you can ask your partner, okay, well, underneath your uniform, I want you to wear this. And then that can be something that you're talking about or flirting about all day, and nobody knows except the two of you.
Right.
That can be something that's outside of the vanilla and moving over into with a little bit more flavor. Or, not wearing any panties under your dress if you go out on a date.
Yeah.
Or it could be anything. Or, going to some kind of adult membership, club, just so that you can be in the surroundings. It doesn't mean that you have to play or anything, but just being in that environment and soaking it all in and creating your fantasies and then talking about your fantasies later.
Yeah.
It could be anything that's it's outside your comfort zone, but it's not too far out, and it's not, other people don't have to know what's happening. So it's still very private. And so that would be my, giving some real examples there.
Yeah. We don't want them to go so far out there that they hate it and they retreat back into their shell even harder.
Right. And definitely debrief. And we'll talk about debriefing. We'll do a whole episode on debriefing. I don't think that's done enough. We usually use that term if they're in some kind of alternative lifestyle. And I think it should be done, period. It doesn't matter what kind of relationship lifestyle that you have. There should always be debriefing, because what you're doing is it's really a consent check-in. It makes it ongoing about, comfort, and it encourages communication.
Yeah. All fun stuff.
Yes.
I'll be interested to see what comments people have about it.
I will be too. And everybody, feel free to comment. If there are any ideas that you all have, for crossing over from the vanilla trap to the rocky road. What are some examples that you all have that you've done over the years, getting yourself outside of your sexual comfort zone?